Hello all. This video has turned out to be part 1 of a combined table saw and router table build. Up until now, I've used saws on guide rails for most cuts and just used a small table saw attachment on my old Coronet Major for the odd rip cut. As you can see, the table saw on the Coronet is tiny. It's particularly short to the right side of the blade, making the fence very limited. All is solidly built and I like using the machine, so the initial plan was to remove the original table and replace it with a larger one formed from 40/40 alley profile. Odd among table saws in that the table itself rises and falls instead of the motor and blade, as well as tilting for some incredibly exciting bevel cuts, it occurred to me I could use this strange feature to lift and tilt the table out of the way when I want to use the machine's lathe or other attachments. Well, here's how that went. As mentioned, the basis of the new table is 40/40 aluminium profile. I found a supplier on eBay doing really good value bundles. I got 8 1 metre lengths sent from Switzerland for around £60. I'll leave a link below in case you're after some profile yourself. You'll notice I'm using stops here for cutting the pieces. Pretty important to set up some sort of stop for the saw for a square frame rather than just marking and eyeballing it. That said, square for me is just a bonus or good practice. What's most important is dead flat. In an almost cruel twist of fate for the original Coronet table saw bed, it happens to be the only dead flat surface in the ever decreasing space in the junk filled garage, so the poor thing is helping true up its replacement. I'm using standard corner brackets to hold everything together, that and sliding T-nuts. They give a superb hold and help a little bit keeping things square, though I still double check as I go. As the frame grows to full size, I make use of spare lengths of profile and a few clamps to true up subsequent pieces. In the end, the top of the frame passed the old 2P test, no obstructions between joints and nice and flat. For the top itself, I'm using white MDF melamine. I would have preferred grey or black to be honest, but couldn't find an appropriate size piece for a reasonable price, so white it is. Don't know if I'd call it an ideal material, but it's stable, machines well, and fairly resilient once edge banded. What is nice about the melamine surface is wood glides effortlessly over it. Now I did consider using more brackets under the frame, set perpendicular, so I could just screw the melamine surface from below. This would give me a cleaner looking top, no holes. I went with countersunk through holes instead to fix directly into the profile. I just prefer the hole to fix in this way, and the holes are unobtrusive in use and can be flush covered, which I may yet do. The table saw fence I'll be using is one kindly sent to me from Banggood to try. I'll do a video looking at that specifically soon. It's a pretty unusual design for a table saw fence. Running in 2 T-tracks, running on lockable mitre bars similar to those on mitre gauges. I'm routing the slots for the tracks here. It's good practice when marking the layout for stuff like this, to always reference from one edge. Anything I measure laterally, like these housings for the track, is measured from the edge closest to me in the shot. Everything horizontal, measured from the back edge in the shot, or to my left. I keep it that way throughout the build. So lifting the original cast iron table off the Coronet, you can see the post I have to mount to. Not much, but it is solid. However, something fairly hefty needed to be mounted under the new table, capable of handling this sort of cantilevered mounting. I went with this large piece of 8mm aluminium plate, bracketed to the profile, not the melamine top, with 3 M8 bolts tapped into it for mounting. The result surpassed my expectations in terms of how stiff it was, very stable and secure. But, despite registering 50 degrees on the gauge, the machine itself only allows for 45 degrees of tilt, and I really should have checked. Not quite enough for head clearance and clear sight of the lathe chuck and attachments. And even if it could tilt to 50 degrees, it would mean removing the mounting bar for the planer on the left of the machine, which unfortunately is stuck fast on this old beastie. So disappointing, and I didn't really want to compromise on size. As it is, it's still not a particularly big table saw bed. So, on to plan B. Always in the back of my mind, my trusty old Mafel KSP85 circular saw will go into semi-retirement as the heart of the new standalone table saw. A little rejig of the frame and the 8mm aluminium plate cut into 2 pieces, the saw is mounted to its new home, nice and solid. None of the mounting load on the melamine, but to the frame using brackets and plate. The alley plate tapped to receive the screws from the saw's base, usually for its parallel fence. An absolute beast, this saw will lend itself well to this application, I think. Once certain everything is true, I take the plunge with the saw. I'm not going right through, as it will likely chip out the melamine, just enough so I can take some measurements from the other side and create a decent clean slot. You can see I'm measuring for a slot only for 90-degree cuts. The KSP85 will actually bevel to 60 degrees, but I haven't decided on an insert plate solution, or even if I want one. So for now the plunge saw score cut cleans the melamine edges, after which I routed the rest of the slot, which I didn't film. It was the evening by then and I just wanted it done. There's only so much tripping over a camera you can take sometimes. Aside from its massive 2250 watts of power, the KSP has a couple of features which are quite handy for this sort of use. Not least its depth or plunge lever. The scale is off now of course, but makes height setting pretty easy otherwise. I'm left with about 60mm depth of cut above the table in case you're wondering. Also, Maffel's K-saws come with what they call the flip keel, basically a spring mounted riving knife. No issues with non-through cuts there then. So for the final step of part 1 of this table saw build, thought I'd share my Nvr Switch Mount. Usually not something you'd make a feature of, but at the opposite end of the saw I'll be mounting a router insert plate. In this instance it will mean I'll be feeding material from where my cup of tea is in the shot there, the opposite side from the saw. To save myself walking around to stop and start the router, I'm putting the NVR on a flip mount. Using profile makes this thankfully untechnical, along with possibly my only bit of good fortune so far with this build, finding a bit of alley plate from a previous creation with holes already conveniently drilled for the profile offcut and switch. The mount underneath the table needs to be quick release of course. As you've probably seen before on this channel, my go-to is cheap bicycle seat post cam levers. I've cut a bit of the thread off and using a nut to space out the unthreaded part of the cam. Something I've learned from building things in profile is, when you have pieces whose ends will be obstructed, put a sliding T-nut in each slot. You might not use them, but if you ever need one, you'll be glad it's there, saving you dismantling or using drop-in Ts, which are frankly rubbish. And there we go, a working NVR. Which, when I want to use the router from the other side of the table, I can just flip around to the other side. Simple but effective. You may have noticed the table is a bit wobbly on its legs currently, but I'm awaiting more profile to finish the frame and stiffen things up. This will be covered in future parts, along with the building of a sliding carriage, which I hope to be able to mount quickly to either end of the table for table saw or router table use. Solutions to that are messing with my brain a bit, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. I'll also look at putting together, because it has no instructions, and using the fence system from Bankgood, first impressions of which are great. I'll also cover adding the router insert plate. The one I have coming is a cool looking aluminium one with steel magnetic inserts. This one in particular designed for the Bosch GMF 1600, which is the big router I have. It's another item kindly being sent to me, this time by Salter, to try along with their router fence. Their own brand router lifts and insert plates look of superb quality, so I'm really looking forward to that. As always, relevant links will be in the description. Hope you'll join me on the next instalments of this build, and thanks for watching.